Good morning. I'm Karen Aviram Beatty, and I'm a managing director here at Google in our Global Partnerships organization. And I'm also a leader in our Women at org. And here at Google, I have a passion for helping women at our company realize the unlimited potential in our professional and personal lives. And that includes a future where we have more women leaders at Google, especially at our director level and beyond, where women are supporting each other to thrive and to grow, and where women feel empowered to live lives on their terms, both professionally and personally, being their authentic selves. And finally, where women feel confident building careers at Google through various stages of their lives, especially when they start families. And in today's world, there is no, it doesn't seem like there's a standard path to pregnancy. So those of us working on starting our families, it's important for us to be educated and understand what those paths are. So when I heard about Mary Wong and her talk, I was so proud to see that Google is supporting discussions like this and working on educating us on challenges and solutions many face when there's a desire to start a family. Mary Wong has been in practice for more than 20 years, helping thousands of couples conceive. She's the founder of Alive Holistic Health Clinic and was an expert panel advisor to the Canadian government on infertility and adoption. As a traditional Chinese medicine TCM practitioner and patient who struggled with infertility, Mary has made it her life's mission to bring about change and improve people's health by bridging the gap between Eastern and Western medicine. Through her new book, Pathways to Pregnancy, Mary offers a moving and eye-opening voice to the national conversation about conceiving. She's been featured on CTV's Your Morning, OM Times, Toronto Star, and Sirius XM. And with that, please help me welcome Mary to Google. And Mary unfortunately hurt herself this weekend. I will let you tell that.
Oh, I have unmiked up. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining me here today. And I'm so pleased that there's people that showed up because I'll tell you, this conversation is a very private one in which touches my heart, and that's why I'm here with you talking about it. And not only is it because I'm a practitioner, but as Karen said, it's because I myself had fertility challenges with my husband, and it took us half a decade before we had our little girl, who I hope to introduce to you at the end of this talk. And, oh right, I'm supposed to use this. And that's what propelled me to write my book, Pathways to Pregnancy. And really, it's about dispelling the shame and the stigma that is attached to it, and utilizing 15 stories, personal stories of hope. I guide you through the various different pathways, which can be wide and varied, whether it's natural or through the integration of Eastern and Western medicine. There is possibility, and you can create life. And the biggest piece for having me here and to write my book was to really ease and prevent the pain and suffering that women and couples go through as they go through the challenges of infertility struggle, as well as preventing challenges if you're just about to start out, or maybe even one day thinking about conceiving and creating a family for the future. So I want to tell you a bit about what I'll be talking about the rest of this discussion here. And very first thing is, what is infertility, how prevalent it is in our society, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about my personal story. And then after, I will look at some common myths that I will want to dispel, and then look at some solutions surrounding that. And so I'll just name some of the common myths: that your eggs are getting older every single day, like they're about to expire, and it's only a woman's issue, and that it's an individual's issue. And one of the very common things, especially in New York, I find, there's this thing about egg freezing, and freezing your eggs is the answer. So I'll talk about that. And then the last bit, which any woman trying to conceive will be just relax and you'll get pregnant. So I'll discuss all that and hopefully provide some good sound advice for you that you can walk away with. And at the very end, I want to invite my friend / patient who has been with me, oh gosh, I don't know, a while now. And she's gonna come and tell you about her story. It's a modern story about family building. And I'm really pleased to have her, and her name is Jackie. And then at the very end, we'll go through some Q&A, and if you have more questions, you can certainly come up and ask. And due, again, to the nature of this conversation, if you want to be private about it, you can use the dory and just put your questions through anonymously. So before I talk further, I just want to tell you a little story. That's my grandmother that you see. And in my youth, I had always wanted to go into medicine, meaning medical school. But in second year university, my grandmother fell ill, and in the hospital, the doctor gave her 2 weeks to live. So we decided to bring her home from the hospital, and as a last resort, we went to Chinese medicine, TCM. So I was the one assigned to drive her to Chinatown through this herbal dispensary, and she would get treatments in the back room, and a tiny little room with just one little treatment table. And I was fascinated by this art science that has been around for thousands of years. But even more than that, I mean, it was miraculous that she recovered within 3 months, and she was 86 at the time, and she lived another 8 years. So in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, how the heck did she slip through the cracks? And I need to do something about this. So instead of going to apply for medical school, what I ended up doing was I just finished my biological sciences degree, and then I went on to study Chinese medicine, and I've never looked back. And so my goal was, I have to bridge that gap between Eastern and Western medicine, and I want to create that access, because why isn't everybody know about this? So here I am, and today and these days, it's more in line with the whole fertility bit. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So infertility is defined such as when a man and a woman has been trying to conceive naturally for a year and they have no success. And that's it. So to me, I don't like that definition. I actually don't like the word infertility. I don't use it in my practice very much, although you'll see it even on my slides. I like to call it fertility challenged, so that it's not like infertility is a state of permanence, but rather a state of being in the moment right now. And I think that we're human beings capable of change and the ability to heal. So that's where I come from. Either way, fertility challenges are really prevalent, and I'll speak specifically to the United States. Currently, right now, 7 million women, and probably more, are experiencing infertility in their reproductive age. And that does not even include those that have already gone through the challenges, and it also doesn't include those that will have fertility challenges. So to put it in another way, that's about 1 in 6 women having fertility challenges in a lifetime. And then to put that into perspective, you have to know that when you walk into the Starbucks next time, or going to a meeting room, and there's 24 people, you'll know at least 4 people are currently experiencing, have experienced, or will one day experience infertility. So that's really prevalent. And so who are these faces of fertility? Well, it can be you, it can be me, it is me, or was me, and it can really be anyone. And it also can be even celebrities that you'll recognize on this screen here, 12 of which here I show, but there are many more who came out and told their story, which I'm so proud of, because they're also helping to lessen the shame and decreasing that taboo around it. And this includes Mark Zuckerberg, who last year, was it last year now? When he announced the pregnancy of him and his wife, it was so awesome and inspiring to see that he revealed that him and his wife had issues. They had multiple miscarriages before they gave birth to their child. So again, the point is you're really not alone if you're currently experiencing this, and there's certainly nothing to be shameful about. And however, it is still private, and I'll tell you, coming from experience, that when you have a non-pregnancy, like month in, month out, trying to conceive and getting that no every month, it kind of wears on you as a human being. And I decided to look up what the definition of a woman is, and I just Googled it online, and dictionary.com puts this out: adult human being who is biologically female that is capable of bearing offspring. And I'm like, whoa. I think it's a little outdated. However, when you're a woman that conceives, great, fine. Or if you choose to not have children, that's fine too. But what if you're that person that have been struggling to conceive? That kind of gets you to a place where, oh my gosh, and I'm not saying everyone does this, but I'll tell you, there were moments in my life where like, am I not good enough? Am I not a woman? It's not not an empowering place to be. So I should have been a fertility goddess. And the reason why I say this is because I have literally helped thousands of women and couples conceive. So really, there was actually a pressure on myself to be able to be that person that goes like this and gets pregnant. And in fact, I would say that growing up for most women and most kids, you're basically told to avoid getting pregnant at all costs when you're young. So really, when the time comes, you're like, oh yeah, it's gonna happen. So that's where I was. And certainly, I thought, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I live a really healthy life, I help other people. Both my grandparents, both my grandmothers had children at 46, naturally. So for sure, it was gonna be a breeze. But yet, when I was 38, my husband and I were trying, and even when we went to the fertility clinic, everything looked great. But it wasn't until finally, somehow, this other fertility doctor I went to, a second one, decided to do an X-ray of my reproductive organs. And that's called a HSG, hysterosalpingogram. And what I saw on that fuzzy screen in front of me as I lied down on that exam table blew me away, and I was shocked because instead of the fallopian tubes that you see on the screen like this, my fallopian tubes were really gnarled and tortuous and basically irreparable. And believe me, I tried. We did everything from under the sun to try to help my tubes, but unfortunately, there comes a point in time when there are just instances where it may not work naturally. So it was a really difficult concept to grasp because, again, I came from a very natural place. I could heal myself, but yet in this instance, it's like, oh my gosh, my husband's sperm and my eggs will never meet up unless we have great intervention. No amount of relaxation was going to do this for us. So I had to think long and hard and evaluate our life. It's like, can we and could we just live child-free? Because you know what? We had a great life. I had a great job. I love my job. We traveled. We can do anything, anytime. And yet there was this deep desire that is just inexpressible. And it's just innate want and desire that just could not be fulfilled unless I just went for it. And so instead of, let me backtrack. If you asked me 15 years prior to that if I would ever consider doing IVF, which is fertilizing my eggs outside of my body and then putting it back in, I would say absolutely not, because I never even took an aspirin. So yet when I was confronted with this challenge where it's my eggs and his sperm would not meet up, all of a sudden I changed my tune, and then instead of looking at it like, oh, this is a horrendous thing, I looked at it as an opportunity and thought, wow, I can actually do this at this day and age. There's technology that can help. And so that's what we did. I surrendered to it. We surrendered to it, and not just once, unfortunately, but multiple times. So I don't want to go on and on about my story. You can read that in my book. But I am really, really, really grateful and blessed that my husband and I ended up having our child. Her name is Zoe, and again, who I hope you'll meet at the end. She'll be turning 5 next Monday. So that's our story. And the reason why I tell you this is because the first thing that I learned was, you know what? I'm human and I'm not immune to life's challenges. And so there is no shame in that. And I tell you my story also is that there is hope, no matter where you're at. And, I didn't expect to get a little emotional. So yes, I really want to be able to help. So when we conceived, I was 44. So I want to talk to this myth about your eggs are getting older every single day. So I'm not going to say that there's no truth behind it, because absolutely the probability of conceiving does decline with age. And for those of you, actually, you know what? Can I invite everyone to close their eyes just for one moment? Because I want to ask something, and of course this is private conversation, so I want to be respectful. So can you all just close your eyes for one moment and raise your hand if you're over 35? Okay. So definitely more than half the people in this room. And also, who here in this room has children? Raise your hand. Okay, a third of the room. Okay, great, thank you. You can open your eyes. So for those that are over 35 and do not have children, I don't want you to panic looking at this chart because it looks really kind of horrible. Because what you'll see and witness is that this graph will show that after the age of 35, there's a decrease of probability of trying to conceive. In every cycle, there's less chance. And simultaneously, there's a higher incidence of miscarriage. And I'll tell you, if anyone here has ever been to a fertility clinic, as soon as you walk in and you're 35 and over, the first thing they'll tell you, without looking at your chart at all, just based on your age, they'll tell you, you are of advanced maternal age. You better go straight to IVF because I'll increase your chances. And then the other thing they'll tell you is, reproductively speaking, you are a geriatric. Very, very bad thing for them to say to you because it, again, is not hopeful at all, doesn't help. Especially if you're going in, you're asking for help, you kind of walk out deflated and depressed, right? And oftentimes, again, in the nature of our society, we're going in our 30s and 40s. So it's a very tough state to be in. So when I tell you to look at this, please take it with a grain of salt and know that you're a dynamic human being and you can change. And there are things that you can do, and I'll discuss that further. And so what I always say is, it's not like your eggs are in a sack of marbles in the ovaries. It's not going to just, come out every month like that marble just sitting there, ready to go. But rather, if you look at this, a brand new car, that 22-year-old actually still has a 1 in 4 or 5 chances of getting pregnant every cycle. So really, if you do your math, which isn't basic, but you have a higher chance of not conceiving than you do conceive at any month. So if you have a 35 or 40-year-old car and you don't do anything to it, and you say, okay, let's go for a drive, well, you might be having a hard time with that. However, if you take care of it, you check under the hood and like oil and do your overhaul, then maybe you can actually take it for a drive. And that's not that much different for our bodies. So there's a saying in Chinese medicine where we say, if you cultivate the soil before you plant your seed, anything can happen. So looking here, you have a little seedling growing into a bud and then a flowering stage of a flower. So that takes time. And now going to our reproductive organs, and this is a follicular genesis, meaning the development of our eggs within our body. When we think about it, oftentimes we think that when we ovulate per cycle, that's it. It's that one little cycle, maybe a 14-day window, depending on your menstrual cycle. But really, our eggs don't start out as already ready to go. They actually start out as a germ cell. And this resting germ cell, it's inert. Nothing's really happening. So they're okay. So it's really the environment that it develops in that we can potentiate. And if you give it lots of love and oxygen and nutrients and supplements and good positive self-talk, all that can impact the state of your cells. So I say, for you, look at your preconception health and take care of it now. And that's through lifestyle and dietary habits, so much more. And I'll actually address that too. But I want to talk about this as well, because when I'm here talking about eggs, and we really relate to fertility as a woman's issue, but in reality, men are completely and equally likely to have fertility challenges. And although we don't really talk about it as women about how challenging it is, well, it's even less of a conversation. It's a non-conversation when it comes to male factor in fertility. And the way I see it is this: there's like this male stereotype. You're a man if you're virile and you can like spread your seeds and populate this earth, right? So when you don't have that, if you're shooting blanks, or if your sperm's going around doing backfloats, like it's going to be questionable. So of course they're not going to talk about it. But I'm going to put it to the forefront because it's a huge issue. And as you see here, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine actually stated that male factor comprises 40% of infertility challenges. So when a couple cannot conceive, it's not just necessarily the woman. And so 30% of it is solely male factor. And then 10% of the 40% is male and female combined. So that's very prevalent. So we talk about age. Age does impact male factor as well. So again, there's this myth that we think that male sperm can just go on and on and on. Well, to a degree. But really, after a certain age, there are studies definitely that are showing now more and more where the sperm, the age of the male sperm, can impact and cause higher incidences of preterm delivery, as well as higher incidences of miscarriage. And see, when we think of miscarriage, we always blame the woman somehow, right? And really, we have to look at both sides of the equation. And then here, when I talk about factors affecting both male and female fertility, there are so many. So it's way beyond just the age that people are thinking about. So there's genetic and birth defects and autoimmune factors, hormonal imbalances, STIs, which are sexually transmitted infections, the primary of which is chlamydia. And then there's people that go through cancer treatments at a young age. Just chemo and radiation, that can impact. And through technology, we're surviving cancer, but then we may not be able to conceive after all our treatments, and that's very sad. Then there are the lifestyle factors, which includes things like cigarette smoking and heavy alcohol use and drugs, and then even exposure to environmental toxins, or even the food that we eat. It's not as wholesome and as good as it used to be. The pesticides, the hormone additives, like everything, plastics from our water. Everything contributes over time, accumulatively. And I'm not saying that you can't get pregnant with any of this. It's just that we have to be wary, and let's decrease that as a factor, right? One last common one is the unhealthy weight bit, because in the United States, unfortunately, there's a high incidence of obesity, and obesity is a contributing factor. And obesity is also tied into diabetes, blood sugar levels, that impacts fertility. And on the other side of the coin for females, it's also unhealthy weight being, having too low of an BMI, body mass index, that contributes. So there are other pathologies or fertility issues that are strictly for women, and these are conditions of endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, other menstrual irregularities. Anyway, I just don't want to keep going on and on. So then there are also male factors, specifically varicocele, which is basically varicose veins in the testicle area. And then vasectomy, and then reversal of the vasectomy for men, for example, who had children, gets a vasectomy, and then they go and have a second marriage, and then they want to have children, and sometimes the reversals don't work either. Impotency, this is always of note in my opinion. So prescriptions, even over-the-counter prescriptions, where men are taking like Rogaine for hair loss, that can impact sperm. FYI. Vanity doesn't pay sometimes. And then the other very important thing for males to consider is about this testicular temperature. Even if your testicles raise 1 degree, it can impact your sperm formation. The good news is that, you know, if you change that lifestyle, like eggs, they have to develop, right? So within a certain amount of time, it can regulate as well. So when you're wanting to conceive, you do want to look at your lifestyle factors. So looking at all those factors that affect and impact fertility, I do have to say that it could be very scary, and it's like, oh my gosh, how does anybody get pregnant at all? But thankfully people do. And do know that whatever your diagnosis, it doesn't mean that you cannot have a baby. You can, and there may be ways that you can help it. So again, it's not something that is set in stone, and you can dynamically change, and you're capable of it. And really, my advice for you, no matter what stage you're at, is do early testing. So be aware of where you're at, reproductively speaking. Go to your doctor, your GP, get checked out, hormones and all the rest of it. But then also find a complementary practitioner to see where you're at in your overall balance, because again, that helps. One thing that I say to people, like when they do IVFs, the medical doctors, the medical profession, what they're good at and what they aim for is to try to increase the number of eggs. So that's the quantitative approach. Whereas in Chinese medicine, what we want to do is we want to help the qualitative part. And to me, that's more important. Like, who cares if you got like 100 eggs if they're all bad? So looking at things in your life that you can do to help the quality while you simultaneously build more eggs, great. Maybe we can optimize your chances. So it's really about integrating Eastern and Western medicine, and then looking at your lifestyle and dietary habits, as well as, if you're not even anywhere near trying to conceive, being fertility aware, like know about your periods, your menstrual cycles. I mean, a lot of people don't even know when they menstruate, when they ovulate. So check that out. There's even fertility awareness groups and practitioners that do that. So I like to bring this image up because it's like, you don't have to necessarily have little raisins shriveling up every month. Really, with time and with lots of love and care and nurture, maybe you'll have like really juicy, awesome, grape-like eggs. So the next one I want to cover, which really no one speaks about, and I want to bring it up, is that infertility is an individual's issue. And listen, I've been told, it's like, oh, you should have started earlier, and you know, or my mother, in fact, before we got married, when I was single, she said, well, you know, you can just have a baby like now before you're too old, because likely people are getting divorced all the time anyway. You might as well just do it now, and the kid will know that you love her. So anyway, I didn't opt to do that, but it was in my mind for sure. But it's really not just an individual's issue, because it's a socioeconomic one, right? Because when you're young, we're taught to further our education so that we can have a really good career. And having that good career, first of all, we have to get up that corporate ladder to pay off our student loans, and then be financially stable enough so that only then can we look at building families. And by that time, most of us are like in our 30s and 40s. And that's a really, really common thing. That's what I see in my personal practice. And again, I don't want to beat this to death. Here's another graph. So the fertility rate does decline as we age. And as I just said, we're starting to conceive when we're in our 30s and 40s, when the rates are on the decline. So that's just fact. And then it's also a worldwide issue. So it's not an individual issue. It's also a trend that's across the board that, again, no one talks about. So I will acknowledge, and of course there's overpopulation in this world, but there's a real imbalance, because as much as there is overpopulation in a lot of developing countries, there are 83 countries in this world right now. That's 38.25 countries in this world right now experiencing a decline in fertility rates. And to below replacement fertility rate means that one woman is having 2 children or less in their reproductive lifespan. And in the United States right now, the rate is 1.89, and in Canada, it's even lower, 1.6. And we certainly know that in Europe, it's even lower than that. And surprisingly, I found that there were certain places in Latin America, even in Asia and the Caribbean, they're all having and experiencing a lowered fertility rate. So the reason for this is, of course, as I just mentioned, this socioeconomic climate where we delay our childbearing years, and with also the increase of actual childlessness. And the other bit to this, of course, is our access to birth control pill, which is a very good thing because there's a lot less teen pregnancy right now. So back in '91, there was over 500,000, whereas now, 2014, there was just under 250,000. So that's a decrease of 61% with the use of birth control pill. And lastly, another reason for the fertility decline is that there's a trend towards smaller families. And again, partly due to the socioeconomic climate. So what's the implication? Well, again, people don't talk about this. So with the rapidly declining fertility rate, without migration, what's happening is this. The baby boomers are getting older. They're retiring, and there's a heck of a lot of them. So we're experiencing a lot of older people dependent on a lot smaller number of young people who are in their workforce to pay for their social services and pensions, and also to drive the economic growth. Which is like, wow, I never thought of that. But some places are, and there are healthcare coverage in place in some countries that recognize this issue, and this healthcare coverage is for IVF. So places like Australia, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Netherlands, Spain, the UK, Israel, and in Canada, just Ontario, one province, which I actually sat on the panel who made this recommendation, by the way, we fund IVF. And then I like the Nordic countries, though. They're actually taking one step further and subsidizing education and daycare for those, so that they can encourage women and couples to start trying to have children younger. So fine and dandy if you're actually in a couple situation, but certainly not so if you're single. And the other last bit as a solution, there are some places, progressive workplaces, such as Google. So I'm really keen and I'm very proud to be here because you guys are one of the most progressive workplaces. So I hope that other small companies will follow suit, or well, big and small companies will follow suit. Most places, so that we can really support this cause. And so there are packages with perks. So those of you that work at Google, you might want to check out with your HR what there is as support. But I'm pretty sure IVF and IUI is funded, and certainly egg freezing is funded. And the other part of it is even the holistic medicine bit. So, you know, go get your acupuncture and all that. So the funding also includes egg freezing. So I want to address that. The myth around egg freezing is that it's your ticket. It's a guarantee. You don't have to worry about it. Because once you have those eggs in the freezer, you can go on with your career. You're totally empowered. You don't have to worry about the pressure of making a baby. And you certainly don't have to think about your biological clock. And the one really good one that I actually like and love is that if you are a person who are confronted with cancer and you need to go for chemo and radiation, you can have the option to freeze your eggs before you do your treatments. Now, the reality is that egg freezing is merely an insurance policy. So it's not a guaranteed in stone, and it's really more of a lottery ticket. So it's an expensive lottery ticket because it's about $20,000 per cycle. And from where I sat, I don't have it listed here, but when I calculated it out, one of the most recent studies, although certain fertility clinics are claiming it otherwise, but what I found was that it takes about 21 eggs retrieved and frozen to have one take-home baby, and that's a lot. And because if anyone's ever done IVF, it's a lot to be able to get 21 eggs, no matter what age. And the other bit to that is it's not as easy as just walking into your doctor's office and say, hey, just suck out my eggs right now. Because it's an orchestrated procedure. It takes a lot. You have to go and do like injectable drugs. You have to go into the fertility clinics day in, day out, do transvaginal ultrasounds, blood work. It's a whole orchestrated event, and before they even take out your egg surgically. So it's not as easy. And the bit that really scares me is that when you think that you have these eggs in the bank and that it's a guaranteed success, it may delay our childbearing years even more, right? Because you're like, oh yeah, no problem, I can just keep on going with my career. And the next thing you know, you wake up and you're 50 and it's like, oh, it's okay, I have my eggs in the bank. But then if you thaw them out, and by the way, this science isn't that old. It's only been off the experimental phase since 2012. So it's really new science, so testing and research bit. And we don't really know what will happen when the eggs are in the freezer for 20 years. I don't know. But they claim that it'll work. So maybe in time it'll be really great. But I'm just a little weary myself. But that's my own personal opinion. So if I haven't scared you off at all, and if eggs freezing is still your ticket, fine. I'm totally great with that because this is your life and I don't get to be part of your life. But I will say this, if you choose to do egg freezing, please, please consider that you can affect your eggs by utilizing preconception treatment and taking care of your preconception health. Again, with the whole lifestyle and dietary measures and using things like acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And by the way, acupuncture, we know as a fact, increases the blood flow to your ovaries and reproductive organs. And with that, you're going to increase oxygenation. That blood flow will increase nutrients, take away debris. So it's all good. And you have the side benefit of causing a relaxation response, which is really necessary when you're going through this because it's a very stressful process. All right, so then that comes to this. Just relax and you'll get pregnant. And I'll tell you, when a woman has been trying to conceive for a while, you really don't want to hear this. And for me, where my eggs and my husband's sperm did not meet and no one knows anything about our case and they say just relax, it's like, okay, I'll try, but I don't think it's going to happen. So if you're sitting on the other side of the fence, please don't say that. However, there is truth to this, a big truth, in that when a lion chases an animal in the wild, they will not reproduce, right? I mean, they're like busy running for their lives. They're in survival mode. Because the energy and the blood flow will be directed to where it's necessary for survival, which is the heart, the brain, and then your limbs to run. So the ironic part is when you're trying to conceive, especially if you're like 30 or 40, and you have lots of layers of stress in your life, like maybe ailing and aging parents, you have more stress on your hand because at work you have so much more responsibility, and then on top of that, trying to conceive month in, month out, I say there's a heck of a lot of stress, and that can in fact impede your chances of conceiving. And there are tests and studies that show that. Now there is a study that also says the opposite, where, oh, gee, you can have stress, but you can still get pregnant. Well, that is also true, because really, it's actually not necessarily the stress that we have in our lives that impacts our ability to conceive, but it's really how we respond to our stress. So Alice Domar, who was the one who actually said and did studies on this extensively, she's, I think, based out of Boston. Anyway, she says that fertility treatment can be at a level comparable to the stress associated with serious illness. So that equals the stress of one going through this kind of thing, fertility, is like that one of going through cancer or heart disease. And that's something. Because, I don't know if I should say this, but I'll say it. When a woman is trying to conceive, it's in silence, nobody knows about it, so that causes stress. And then, if you're at work and in an unsupportive work environment, and you're fearful of losing out on your next promotion to another male colleague, you don't say a word. You have to pretend and keep that smile on your face, and you have to try to go to work. And that's tough, especially if you have a 9-to-5 job and you're going to a fertility clinic, which requires you to go into those clinics every morning, which takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And the clinic I went to took probably like 3 hours. But imagine navigating that and trying to get to work at 9 o'clock. Well, first of all, you're not even going to get to work on time. And then pretending that you care, well, you do, but you can't when you're so focused in trying to get to work on time. It's just this cycle of stress. So what do you do? Do you go on a mountain and you meditate for a couple of months? I don't think that's feasible, considering that our socioeconomic climate where you have to pay your rent. So I say, there's a lot of things I say, but here's a couple of pieces of advice. If you're in a relationship, please focus in on your intimacy. What ends up happening is that people have this baby-making sex, really contrived, not so fun. And for those who are already doing it, will get it, because it's like, okay, you have sex, and then you gotta put your feet up in the air, you got your pillow under your butt, and it's like, don't even touch me, go away, right? There's zero intimacy left. So I say, wait a minute, there's actually something to creating that intimacy after you have, in fact, you don't even have to have sex. Just be intimate by holding hands, for Pete's sakes. Talk to each other, communicate. Because that helps those natural reproductive hormones, that love hormone, will have your body say yes. Aside from me, because I have blocked tubes, but that's besides the point. So there are other things though, right? So other things that help our nice feel-good hormones that has our body say yes would be things like exercise. And I'm not talking like running a marathon, which requires too much energy, but things like just walking, connecting with nature, and doing yoga or dancing, pole dancing if you'd like, right? Whatever suits you. And then I added meditation and hypnosis, but I also realized that Google, or maybe, a lot of places where women can be that type A, or what I call AAA personality, it may be torturous to think about sitting down and going om and meditating, right? And that's not really relaxing, so you can't force yourself to do that. So what you can do is what I call a walking meditation or the eating meditation. Just being in that present moment to take that edge off of your adrenals, so that it's not like, you just want to calm it down, even if it's for 5 minutes at a time. That'll help you. That has your body go, okay, all right. And that's not just for fertility, that's for overall health. And lastly, and very importantly, because most of us are at work more than we are at home. So I think it's really important to have a supportive workplace. And if you're not in a supportive workplace and you can't help that, then at least tell one person, have some support somewhere in your life, whether it be with a colleague or a manager, friends, family, something. And then consider proposing things that will make it less stressful at work, like telecommuting or flex hours, so that you can go to a fertility clinic and get those treatments if you need to. And so the fact is, 57% of women participate in the workforce. So we really need to look at our work piece, right? Compared to the 50s, where only 34% of us are there. So I say to you, and all those employers out there, that supporting conception is good business. There was a paper that was written by Andrew Oswald and friends, and they wrote a study called Happiness and Productivity. And I think that's where Google got this from. I'm not sure, someone can tell me otherwise. But they recognize that a happy employee is a productive employee. So that means there's higher productivity, higher sales, higher creativity, and much less incidences of wanting to leave an organization. And I tell you, when I see patients day in, day out, when I see patients that don't have that supportive environment, you know what they do? I have witnessed women have to leave work, or they're so stressed out, they have to go to their doctor, and the doctor says, hey, you need time off. So they go on stress leave, sick leave, unpaid leave, just to try to have a kid. But if we transform our society where we create that support around it, I'll tell you, as a woman having gone through this, there's nothing better than having a distraction, because when you're trying to conceive, that's all you can think about. So if you're in a happy workplace and it's supportive, it's like, oh, thank goodness I can go to work so I can not have to think about my fertility challenges, even for like a minute. So that's why I allude to back to Google. And I think that's probably one of the reasons, amongst many reasons, why you are considered the #1 workplace, not just one time, but 7 times in 10 years. And that was rated right from Fortune magazine. So again, I really, really would love to see other companies, big or small, adopt this scenario to help our future children be created so that they can impact this earth. So my final thoughts is that, for you as an individual, let's take charge of our fertility early, and let's focus on our preconception health. And then also a very, very big piece is that no matter what your diagnosis, please know that there is option, and just be open to opportunity, because you never know the possibilities. And before I introduce you to Jackie, I just really want to acknowledge some people. And it's not in my book, but it's those of you who are out there who have gone through this journey and decided to get off this road. I honor you. And it's not necessarily the path that you have chosen initially, but I say that you are fertile in your life, because you make a difference in this world. You are a mother in this life, mothering nature, mothering animals, or the communities, or the workplace, but you do make a difference. So now, I'm just gonna say one last thing. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I say it takes a village to create a child. Thank you. I'm gonna blame it on my bum leg. That's why I'm so weepy today. But I'm really, really, really thrilled and honored to have my patient/friend who has come all the way from Toronto to join me to tell you her story. It's inspiring, it's hopeful, and this is Jackie, who is so lovely to bring me a tissue. And before she starts talking, she came to me when she was in her early 40s, and wanting to conceive. And I don't want to spoil her story, but it's an awesome one to share with you. I do want to note that she's actually not in my book. There are 15 stories, and she's not one of them. And it's not because I don't like you, but there were actually a lot of stories, and at the time it just it didn't come up. But she's so awesome to be able to share her story, which of course again it's private, right? And she's willing to share. So thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome. Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here today at Google, but also an honor to be asked by Mary to come and talk about my story. I decided a while ago, mostly I wanted to support Mary, but I also thought it was really important to share what has gone on in my life, because I thought maybe it's validating for those of you who are out there to hear someone else and what they've gone through and hear the emotions and the ups and the downs of everything that I have experienced. So I was probably in my late 30s, maybe 38. I was dating a guy for a few years, and we split up when I was about 38. I'd never really thought so much about children. I wanted them at some point in my life, but I was so career-minded. I was what Mary called a AAA career personality. And so when we split up, it all of a sudden became an issue that really was important to me. So I decided, I think I can do this on my own. So my first reaction was to think, now how am I going to do this on my own? And because it was so recently after we split up, I started calling up my ex and saying, hey, you want to get together? And it was usually right around my ovulation cycle. And so we did that for a few months, didn't work. Then I thought, now I've got to reach out to someone and figure out how am I going to get someone to donate some sperm to me. So I went through an entire process, and I won't share that with you now, but happy to talk about it with you after. But found someone, and I used my donation sperm and went to a specialist in Toronto and asked him, here I am, I'm approaching 40, and I really want to have children, what can I do? So he immediately gave me the speech that Mary talked about. Well, your chances aren't pretty good. I don't know what to tell you. We'll try this. Let's skip everything else. We'll move right to the final stage, which is called IVF, in vitro fertilization, where we take your eggs and we match them up and we'll try and put them back in you and we'll hope for the best. And I think he even crossed his fingers. So we tried that. And I'd always lived a very healthy life. I didn't really take a lot of medication. I thought, I should be okay to do this the first time. It shouldn't be an issue. Sure enough, I got my bag full of fertility drugs and started injecting at work in the bathroom, like you've heard the stories. I got my egg count so high that at the first time I retrieved 28 eggs. They took these 28 eggs and they fertilized them in their laboratory. And 5 days later, they had these embryos, and only 5 of them lasted 5 days. So they took 2 of them, because in Canada you can only do 2 at a time, put them back, and they hoped for the best. So I waited those 2 weeks, very hopeful that this is gonna work because I'm a very healthy person. And so at the end of the 2 weeks, I went in for my blood test and I couldn't wait till the afternoon was over, phoned them up, and unfortunately they didn't take. I went through this 2 or 3 times, putting back the ones that worked, and waited the 2 weeks, and unfortunately it didn't work. I went through this IVF cycle 5 times. And as I got to the end of it, the number of eggs were less and less, but it just wasn't working well for me. I decided at this stage, I was well into my 40s, and I thought, I'm gonna give this one more try, but what I'm gonna do is I'm going to not worry about it, not stress about it, and I decided this is my last one, but at the same time, I'm going to keep trying to live this work-life balance that these people talk about, and I'm gonna enjoy some of the things that I had in the past. So when I was younger, I played some competitive tennis. I decided to sign up for a tennis club, went out, started playing tennis, started looking at places to travel, planning trips, doing different things, and I thought, if this doesn't work, at least I've now developed a personal life. So I went out and started going through the cycle. Right before I started the cycle, I made a decision. I'm going to go and see every person that can give me good advice. During this process, someone had recommended Mary to me. And I started going to Mary for acupuncture to help make myself more fertile. Probably stress relief too. So we went and we tried to develop my ovaries and to develop my nest to create eggs. I started playing some more tennis. I started socializing more. I tried to cut back on work. And so I thought, this one's gonna work. As a very strong safety measure, I also came here to New York City, and I thought, if I can go and get an appointment with one of the best fertility doctors and get their advice, for sure that's gonna work. So I went to, I don't know if I can name drop here, but I went to the doctor that Celine Dion used. I thought, if it works for her, it's going to work for me. So I went there, and we had a complete workup, and he looked at everything. And ironically, his protocol was exactly the same as what I was doing already at home. So I went home. I tried it one more time. This protocol took 2 months, so I had sort of a ramp up of one set of drugs and then another set. Started playing tennis, went away on a trip, enjoyed myself a little bit more. And ironically, an interesting thing happened. I was playing tennis, and during my second or third tennis lesson, my tennis pro asked me out. And I thought, okay, why not? It's something to occupy my mind. So we went out on a few dates, and we started dating. Keeping in mind, through this whole dating process, I'm injecting fertility drugs and taking all this stuff in order to have kids. So it came time to the implant, and it was about a week away. And I called up the doctor and I said, is there any way we can postpone this? And he said, well, you've been taking the drugs for 2 months. I think you're going to have a really good chance. I think we should do this. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and do it. So one evening I told my boyfriend what I was going to do, and I said, this is something I really want. I've been using sperm donated from a friend. It's something I really want to do, and it's really important to me. We stayed up the whole night talking, and by the next morning, he had offered to introduce him as the donor instead of my friend. So we rushed to the doctor's office. He runs through all the tests, the blood tests, the samples, everything, and at the last minute, we switched it out, and we put it in, and I thought, oh, maybe this is the one that's going to work. Put it back in, waited my 2 weeks, which was really, really painful, and went in for my blood test. Later that afternoon, I phoned. It was negative. So I decided that I've met a nice guy. I'm going to live the rest of my life with this person, and I'm going to enjoy my life, and I'm going to have better work-life balance. So about a month later, I wasn't feeling well, and I went to Mary, and I said, Mary, I'm just not feeling great. Can you help me out? And so we tried a couple of different things. I still wasn't feeling well for a couple of months. And then I went to the doctors, and they said, can you run some tests? Because maybe it's the effects of the drugs, and I'm a little bit worried. So they did a bunch of blood tests, and a couple of days later, the doctor phoned me up, and he said, I've got some bad news for you. And I said, what is it? And he said, you're 8 weeks pregnant. So as it had turned out, the advice that Mary had given me all along while I was in treatment with her was sometimes drugs just don't work for people. Sometimes medical intervention is just not the right thing for some people's bodies. So what I had to do was wait till after I had gone through that whole process in my life to find out that it just would have worked the old-fashioned way. So ironically, the way it happens is that as we had a child, a very healthy child, and I'll tell you something interesting. When I was pregnant and I went in for my delivery and all of my appointments, at that stage I was 44, and they referred to me as a high-risk pregnancy. And I said, why are you referring to me as high risk? It's been a very easy pregnancy other than being sick all the time. And they said, well, anybody over the age of 38 is just deemed high risk because they don't think you can get pregnant again. So you automatically get categorized as high risk. So that's already a negative feeling the whole time you're carrying a pregnancy. So ironically, when my son was about 1, my boyfriend at the time, we were about to get married, made a decision that parenting was just too big of a responsibility for him. So as of the age of 1, it then became me and my son. So it kind of is a full circle story that it ended up being me and my beautiful son that live our lives together. So that's my story. I hope it means something to some of you, whether it was validating, inspiring, just made you feel better. I hope I was able to do that for you. And I'm so thankful to Mary, who not only helped me through acupuncture, but just changed the whole process of what I was feeling to be positive and encouraging and helpful and inspiring. And I can't thank her enough for that. So thank you very much.
I see a couple of kids here. Shall we invite them?
Sure.
Do you want to meet them? Zoe and Tristan, would you like to come on stage for a minute? Is that okay?
They don't take stairs,
It's not
they
a
just climb up.
contest. It's not a contest. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, sweetie. All right, so that concludes our talk, and Sometimes this happens. Zoe,
Say hi, Google.
you want to
Hi,
say
Google.
hi? You want to say hi?
Daddy, Daddy. Buzz, buzz.
Okay,
All
when we
right,
get off the
that's
stage,
it.
we're going to do Q&A.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
All right, there's a couple of questions, and we want to get to it very quickly because we just have 5 minutes. So, what questions should you ask a reproductive endocrinologist when they advise you to go to IVF instead of other methods? Well, as Jackie just mentioned, their first line of defense is IVF. Let's go straight to IVF because that'll give you your chances, that increase your chances. And again, in her case, it was actually the opposite. So it's not always the best answer. And and again, this is not my journey, this is your journey. If you feel confident enough, and if you haven't tried it, if you haven't given it enough of a shot, it's like, well, why not try more naturally? Sometimes they may add a little bit of drugs. That's okay, but you could still do timed intercourse with that. So you can ask them, if you're not comfortable with full intervention, you can say, hey, what's the lowest amount of intervention I can do? Maybe we could even just do cycle monitoring, which is literally looking at your ovaries developing over the course of your menstrual cycle, and let that be enough of an intervention. So I hope that answers that. Everyone's different. And some people want to go straight to IVF. And again, that's not necessarily the best answer. It is for some, but not for everyone. So second question, a common myth for egg freezing is the procedure may cause early menopause. Is this true? Wow, that's a great question. Again, egg freezing, as I had mentioned, is a very new science. So, but I would say that no, I'm not sure. And certainly if you're just doing one IVF cycle, I don't think it's going to cause that. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is very true. I did more than 5, 6 IVF cycles with drugs, and I am in early menopause. So I'll be 50 this year, and I was already in menopause last year, or the year before even. So is it due to IVF? Not 100% sure, but it is early.
But conversely, I did many, many processes, and I'm turning 54 this year, and I'm not in menopause yet, so hopeful.
So yeah, right, and everyone's an individual.
Yes.
We all respond differently. Okay, third, your presentation was the first I'd seen with the 120-day egg development cycle. I was treated for an ectopic pregnancy with methotrexate, and they said I could start trying again after 120 days. Should I wait longer than 3 months based on your development chart? Again, I mean, this depends on your scenario, and are you working with someone? Are you taking preconception health treatments? Methotrexate is a cancer drug, so you do want to get that out of your system. So that's probably why they say that anyhow, right? But then taking a little bit of extra time to really help, again, the quality rather than, oh my gosh, every month is a missing month and I have to do it. That doesn't necessarily work, because to me, it's much better to have your body in a better place rather than trying in month in, month out, and then maybe even getting more failed miscarriages. You'd rather have one that counts, right? I mean, having that take-home baby is much more important. So what are your thoughts on autoimmune specialists and infertility? Following multiple 5 to 7 week miscarriages with PGS normal embryos, my RE recommended an autoimmune specialist, but I can't find much scientific evidence that this may make a difference. What would you do following these miscarriages? Okay, so in my book, I actually have a chapter on autoimmune. How much time do I have left? Does someone? I don't know. Okay, fine. I'll just go. So autoimmune is there. And there are some specialists that claim that they can help. And I've witnessed some women that did some crazy wild things, like go to Mexico to do these autoimmune treatments. And it is controversial, but I have seen it work. So again, you'd have to see. But then on the other side of the picture, I've also witnessed people that have autoimmune markers, which they can detect through blood work. And yet over time, and even just like having themselves be in a more balanced place, those, by the way, one of those autoimmune markers is called natural killer cells. So how horrible is that, going through life thinking that, oh my gosh, I'm killing my cells, I'm killing embryos, I'm a killer, right? Not very empowering. So it's like, well, look at your life and let's see about aligning it in a way that our body, instead of producing autoimmune response, will actually say, yes, I want this. I love my embryos. And then you'll get pregnant. And I actually have seen this. So again, you can go either way. No hard, fast rule. Many miscarriages are caused by chromosomal abnormalities. How much does a man's health, well-being, stress, etc., impact the eventual health of an embryo? So I took care of that earlier when I talked about male factor. It does contribute. If I had a previous ectopic pregnancy and self-injectomy means taking out the fallopian tube, how much at risk am I for another ectopic? You are more at risk because chances are when a person has one ectopic pregnancy, there's a higher incidence of another ectopic, which means implantation of embryo developing in the fallopian tube. Do you advise that I move to ART to prevent another rupture? Well, the first thing is that you don't necessarily have to have a rupture. When you get pregnant, you go and do early testing to see where you're at. You have to visualize that it's actually in your uterus. And if it's in your uterus, great. But again, in Eastern medicine, one of the things that we do is we want to create lots of love, luscious, juicy endometrial lining so that your embryos can stick in that uterine lining and prevent the fallopian tubes from, migration of the embryos. How much does endometriosis prevent pregnancy? It depends on the case, but it doesn't have to preclude you from getting pregnant at all. And certainly there are cases where it's so severe and you're getting like lots of scar tissuing that really blocks all the different reproductive organs. But again, depending on the severity, it can be helped either naturally or sometimes with intervention like medical surgical removal of tissue adhesions. So can you mitigate with homeopathy? So I cannot really address homeopathy because I don't practice homeopathy, but perhaps, but certainly I can speak to naturopathic medicine and Chinese medicine, and it can potentially help. And lastly, what are the most important dietary changes you recommend in preparing for an IVF cycle? Do you recommend cutting out alcohol completely? Well, I would say yes, and it doesn't have to be for life. But again, as I talked about, when leading up to it, there's 90 to 120 days of egg development. So you really want to give it the best environment possible. So why not? And the other question, actually, I relay it back to you. Ask yourself, if I don't get pregnant in this IVF cycle, am I going to blame it on that one drink that I had? Now, on the opposite side of the coin, I also don't love it when people are so strict and anal about their diet and lifestyle that it becomes an impediment and stress building in of itself. Because again, increased stress can impede and decrease our chances of conceiving. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.